At first, they thought he was dead, curled into the corner of a weather-beaten shed behind the post office in Bitterroot Ridge, Montana. The little body didn't move. Not when the wind slammed the door, not when the mail truck rattled past, not even when the hardware store clerk leaned in with his flashlight. He was no bigger than a squirrel, just a ball of dirty fur, soaked through from 3 days of freezing rain. His paws were scraped raw, his ribs showed through the matting. At first glance, he looked like any lost kitten in a town that hadn't had a vet in years. But when Evelyn Carter got the call just after dawn, something in the clerk's voice stopped her mid-sip. "It's not a regular cat," he whispered. "It's got ears, black tips, and the way it looks at you, ma'am, it's not right." Evelyn had been running the Bitterroot Wildlife Rescue Center for nearly 20 years, tucked into a stretch of highland pine where the map ran out and instinct took over. She had bottle-fed fawns, soothed dying owls, even helped a black bear give birth in the back of a stalled trailer. She thought she knew what heartbreak looked like. But nothing prepared her for that moment. She crouched beside the shed, steam rising from her breath in the sharp morning air. The light was weak, filtered through slats in the old wood, and it took a moment for her eyes to adjust. Then she saw him. Pressed so tightly into the corner, he seemed fused to it. Fur caked in ice and dust, chest rising, barely, eyes open, unblinking, watching. And those ears. The unmistakable black tufts of a bobcat. "God," Evelyn breathed, more prayer than curse. "You're just a baby." She moved slowly. No sudden motion, no eye contact. She'd learned the rhythm of rescue like some people learned prayer, through repetition and reverence. She reached for her towel, the soft green one she kept for newborns, the one that smelled faintly of cedar and goat's milk. The kitten didn't move, not until her hand touched the edge of his space. Then he growled. Not a roar, not even a real warning, but something like a shiver with teeth. His whole body trembled with it, a sound that was equal parts fear and fury, and the last thread of life trying not to snap. Evelyn's heart cracked clean in two. "You're not done yet, are you?" she whispered. "All right then. Let's fight together." She wrapped him fast, firm but gentle, felt the twitch of claws catch the towel, then stop. The fight left him in a breath. He went limp, and for a terrible second she thought she'd been too late. But then, movement, shallow breath against her palm. A heartbeat, like a sparrow's wing. She bolted for the truck, towel pressed to her chest like something holy. The drive back felt longer than it was. Rain had turned the gravel roads to mush, and the sky hung heavy with snow that hadn't decided whether to fall. In the passenger seat, the bundle barely stirred. Every mile, Evelyn reached over and touched his side, counting seconds between breaths. Back at the center, the lights were already on. Lena, her intern from Missoula, stood waiting with a warm pad, gloves, and worry carved into her young face. Evelyn didn't speak. She laid the kitten down on the heated table, unwrapped the towel, and stepped back. For one heartbeat, the room held still. Then Lena gasped. "Is that Bobcat?" Evelyn said. "Maybe 5 weeks, male, starving, hypothermic, probably alone for days." The cub lay on his side, his spine too prominent, his ears crusted, his tail limp. But his eyes were still open, still watching. They moved fast, fluids under the skin, thermometer, heating pad. No name. Not yet. Never at the beginning. You couldn't name what you might have to let go. "Do you think he'll make it?" Lena whispered. "I think he wants to," Evelyn said. "And sometimes, that's enough to start with." They tried the bottle after an hour. He didn't bite, didn't suck, just stared past them like he was already fading. Evelyn held the tiny form in her lap, the bottle poised just so, tears catching at the edge of her vision. Then, without warning, his pink tongue flicked. Once, twice, then latched. He drank like he remembered something buried deep. Lena nearly dropped the clipboard. "He's doing it." Evelyn couldn't speak. She just smiled, silent and wide-eyed, as the kitten's heartbeat thudded against her wrist, stronger now. She didn't mean to say it, but it slipped out, quiet as breath. "Atta boy, Valor. Hang in there." And the name stuck. Valor made it through the night, barely. Evelyn barely did, either. She slept in the office chair with her boots still on, a blanket across her shoulders, and her phone alarm set every 2 hours. The nursery lights stayed dim, but never off. Every time she stirred, she checked the monitor. Every time she checked, he was still breathing. By morning, the snow had started. Fine powder drifted down over the barn roof, quiet as ash. And inside, the little Bobcat had curled tighter against the heated fleece pad. He didn't growl when Evelyn approached. Didn't flinch. He just blinked, slow and heavy, like the weight of waking was almost too much. "Good morning, little storm survivor," she said softly, kneeling beside the pen. She slid her gloved fingers under his chin and was surprised when he didn't pull away. "Let's see what today looks like." Lena joined her a few minutes later, balancing a warm bottle and a chart already marked with heart rate, respiration, hydration notes. They worked like people do when their hearts are fragile. Carefully, deliberately, as if every step might tip fate one way or the other. They offered the bottle. Valor didn't fight. He drank. Slow at first, then faster. Then suddenly he stopped and did something neither of them expected. He reached. One paw, unsteady and thin, pressed against Evelyn's wrist. Not hard, not to scratch or resist, just to connect. The touch was so light, it might have been imagined. But she felt it, and it broke something loose in her. The rest of the day passed in a rhythm both old and entirely new. Feed, clean, rest, warm pad check, fluids, notes. At noon, he attempted a weak chirp, nothing more than a breath with shape, but still, a voice. By evening, his eyes followed Evelyn as she moved through the room, not just in awareness, in recognition. "He's bonding," Lena said quietly, from behind a curtain of steam rising off a mug of chamomile. "With you." Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't, because that was the thing every rehabber feared and every secret heart longed for. That line, that blurred, sacred, dangerous line where an animal in your care stops seeing you as a threat and starts seeing you as something else. By the third day, he started waiting for her, not visibly. But Evelyn noticed the way his body relaxed when she entered, the way his breathing slowed, the way that faint, fragile vibration started up deep in his chest. A purr. It wasn't supposed to happen. Bobcats don't purr like house cats. Not like that. Not unless... No. She refused to name it yet. But every time she reached for him, he leaned in, and every time she stepped back, he watched. By the end of the week, his fur had started to fluff back out, still patchy, but clean. The sores on his paws were healing. He batted, clumsily, at a feather Lena dangled over the pen. When she left, he cried. Not loud, just that same broken chirp she'd heard the first morning, repaired slightly, but still aching. "We have to be careful," Evelyn told Lena one night after the third feeding. "If he imprints..." "I know," Lena said. "But it's already happening." They tried to change course, started wearing gloves that masked scent, reduced eye contact, installed a mechanical bottle holder on the door so they could feed him without touching him directly. But Valor refused. He didn't just resist, he starved. 3 feedings missed. By day 2, he'd lost weight. By day 3, Evelyn broke. "I don't care what the manual says," she snapped, grabbing the bottle in bare hands. "He wants to live, but not without trust. So let him trust." She knelt, opened the pen, and held him. He didn't just eat, he devoured. Half the bottle in one go, his paws gripping her sleeve like an anchor, the rumble in his chest louder than ever. She held on too, held him like a secret the world had no right to take from her yet. And somewhere deep inside her, beneath the discipline, beneath the rules, beneath the years of knowing better, something wild and old whispered, "You've already chosen each other." Dr. Henry Wallace showed up just after the snow line reached the barn's roof. He came the way he always did. Quiet boots, thermos in hand, expression like a mountain carved in calm. A former field vet for Yellowstone, Henry had seen his share of bad breaks and worse endings. But even he paused when he stepped into the nursery and saw the young Bobcat rising up on his hind legs. Paws braced on the pen wall, ears perked not in fear, but joy. "He greets you like a dog," Henry said, raising one eyebrow as Valor leaned against the mesh, chirping once. "Or a child." Evelyn said nothing. She just reached into the pen and scratched behind those black-tipped ears. Valor melted under her touch like it was home. Henry set down his bag. "Let's take a listen." Valor tolerated the exam with the patience of someone who trusted the hands that held him. He lay on the padded table, paws tucked, tail curled. Only flinched slightly when the stethoscope touched his chest. Henry frowned, moved the bell again, then again, and again. Evelyn's hands went still on Valor's back. "What is it?" she asked. But she already knew. She had heard that silence in Henry's breath before. Heard it before bad news, before decisions no one wanted to make. "There's a murmur," he said gently. Low, but definite. Lena, standing beside the cabinet, froze mid-reach. What kind of murmur? Henry connected the portable ultrasound, slid the probe along Valor's side. The monitor hummed to life, blue and gray shadows pulsing on the screen. A steady thump echoed through the quiet room, his heart laboring in rhythm. Then Henry pointed. "Here," he said softly. "There's a small septal defect, likely congenital, a hole where there shouldn't be one." Evelyn swallowed. What does that mean for him? "In here?" Henry placed a hand over the barn. "He'll live, long as he doesn't overexert. Eats well, keeps stress low. You'll have to monitor him regularly." "And out there?" Lena asked, already knowing the answer. Henry looked at Valor, who had turned his head to press his cheek against Evelyn's wrist. "In the wild?" Henry said. "He wouldn't make it through a season, maybe not even the first storm." The words hit Evelyn harder than she expected, as if she'd been holding a rope tight, only to have it snap in her hands. She sat down slowly on the bench near the table, elbows on her knees. "So that's it? He's not going home?" "No," Henry said gently. "But that doesn't mean he won't have a life." They were quiet for a long moment. Valor shifted in place, then stepped off the table and curled beside Evelyn's feet like it was the most natural place in the world. His body pressed against her boot, his purr steady and deep. Henry smiled. "He's chosen you, that much is clear." Evelyn reached down and stroked his back. "I didn't mean to let him. I tried everything to stop this." "I know," Henry said. "But sometimes, they don't want a handler. They want a partner." Lena leaned against the wall, arms folded, her eyes wet but steady. So what now? We can't keep him as a pet. No, Evelyn agreed. But maybe he becomes something else. Henry nodded slowly. You've got the permits. You've got the facility. If you're willing to take on the work, the public education program could use him. He's healthy enough to live. Just not wild. Evelyn looked down at the bobcat sleeping against her boot. Not wild, not safe, not anything expected. Just alive, and completely his own. She whispered, almost to herself, "You're going to be the one who teaches them." Valor didn't stir, but his tail flicked once, slow and certain. They didn't plan for the hug to go public. The idea had been simple. Invite the local elementary school for a small pilot session. 20-something kids, a couple of teachers, maybe a reporter from the town weekly. No live stream, no fancy signage, just Valor in his new enclosure, Evelyn nearby, and a message that had been burning in her chest for months. This bobcat was never meant to live in a barn, but he's alive, and his story can keep others wild. They set it up on a Wednesday. Snow had melted into slush. Kids showed up in muddy boots and puffy jackets, some of them still sleepy from the bus ride up the ridge. Evelyn stood by the enclosure, hand resting on the fence post, trying not to look like her heart was rattling inside her ribcage. Valor was already at the gate, pacing with slow confidence, tail flicking, ears alert. His coat had filled out beautifully, a deep, tawny gold dappled with shadows. But what struck people most were his eyes. Wild, yes, but also familiar, curious, calm. "I want you to remember something," Evelyn began, gesturing toward him. "This isn't a pet. This is a wild animal with a wild heart. He's not here to be owned. He's here to be respected." The kids nodded. Some whispered. One small girl clutched her classmate's sleeve. Then Valor reared up. Right there, in front of 20 wide-eyed children, he stood on his hind legs, reached through the greeting window, and stretched his front paws toward Evelyn. She hesitated, just for a heartbeat, then stepped in, and Valor wrapped his forelegs around her shoulders, pressed his broad head against her neck, and purred, loud enough for everyone to hear. Gasps rippled through the group. Someone whispered, "Is he hugging her?" One teacher covered her mouth. Another reached for her phone. The purring didn't stop. Evelyn stood still in the curve of his body, her hand resting gently on his back. "I didn't train him to do this," she said quietly, her voice thick. "I tried to keep him wild, but he chose this, and in choosing, he gave us something powerful." Click. The sound of the photo being taken didn't even register until later. By that evening, the image had hit a local Facebook group. By the next morning, it had gone national. "Montana Bobcat Hugs Rescuer," the headlines read. "Real-life wildcat teaches kids about conservation, one hug at a time." And suddenly, Valor wasn't just a rescue. He was a symbol. The phone at the center rang non-stop for days. News crews called. Wildlife nonprofits emailed. Teachers begged for virtual tours. Parents sent thank you letters. Strangers from other states sent hand-carved figurines, handwritten notes, small checks in the mail with nothing more than, "For the cat that hugs." Evelyn tried to keep things small, local, grounded. But Valor wouldn't have it. Every group that came, he greeted the same way, alert, steady, eyes bright with recognition. And every time she stepped near, he reached for her, wrapped her up, pressed close. And each time, the room went silent. Not because it was cute, but because it felt sacred. One day, a boy with autism who hadn't spoken a full sentence in 6 months watched Valor hug Evelyn, and then whispered, "He's not scared." The teachers cried. So did Evelyn, because that was the point. Valor wasn't here to entertain. He was here to show people, young, old, scared, hardened, that connection could still happen, even across species, even after loss, even when wildness stayed alive inside you. Later that year, the governor's office sent a letter of commendation. Evelyn tacked it to the wall in the office, just above a crayon drawing of Valor hugging her, done by a child named Maddie from Bozeman Elementary. It was the crayon picture that made her cry, because it was messy and beautiful and exactly right. The years passed the way spring snow melts in Montana. Quiet, then suddenly, Valor grew into himself. His long legs filled out, his shoulders broadened, and the downy softness of kittenhood gave way to the dense, powerful build of a full-grown bobcat. But there was always a gentleness in him. Even when he prowled the logs in his enclosure, even when he leapt a dozen feet with the silent force of his species, he would turn mid-air, land, then look straight to the fence to see if Evelyn was there. And if she was, he would purr. That low diesel engine sound still vibrated through the barn walls, now deeper with age, but no less sincere. They stopped calling it public programming. Somewhere along the way, it had simply become visiting Valor. Schools, families, students, conservationists. People came from as far as Minnesota and Oregon. They didn't come for tricks. They came to see what it looked like when something wild didn't lose its heart, even when it couldn't go home. By year 7, Valor had greeted more than 5,000 children. Evelyn never let a single group leave without hearing it. He's not here because he's tame. He's here because he trusted me, and I refuse to break that trust. That's our responsibility now, to honor it, but even wild hearts wear down. By his 8th year, Valor's jumps shortened. He slept more, stretched longer in the sun. The black tips of his ears turned gray. His gait, once silent as wind through grass, now held a hint of stiffness in the mornings. The vet confirmed what Evelyn already knew in her bones. "It's the heart," Dr. Wallace said gently. "He's not in pain, but the clock's ticking a little louder now." They adjusted his diet, lowered his platform, moved his water closer, and still, every morning, he was there, waiting at the fence, paws lifted. The hugs never stopped. One afternoon, a boy asked, "Does he know he's getting old?" Evelyn knelt beside him and said, "I think he knows something better. That love doesn't stop working just because your body slows down." That night, she sat beside his sleeping form, running her hand gently down his back. "You were never mine to keep," she whispered, "but you were mine to care for, and you gave me more than I ever knew I needed." Valor stirred, eyes half-lidded, and pressed his broad head into her palm, and purred. The morning came quiet. Too quiet. It was early spring, the kind where the snow had finally surrendered, but the trees hadn't yet remembered how to bloom. Evelyn walked the familiar path from her cabin to the barn, coffee in hand, boots crunching the half-frozen gravel. Everything looked the same, except it wasn't. Valor wasn't at the gate. For 8 years, he'd always been there, waiting, paws up, rumbling with that impossible affection. But this time, his pen was still. Her breath caught. She stepped faster, pushed through the barn doors, and found him curled on the fleece pad beneath the high window. The light hit his fur in soft, amber tones. His body looked peaceful, like sleep had wrapped around him mid-dream. "Hey," she said gently, voice shaking. "Hey, my brave boy." She knelt, laid a hand over his side. Still warm, but no breath, no heartbeat. Just the kind of stillness that doesn't wake. Evelyn folded forward until her forehead rested against his shoulder. The purr was gone. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full. With years, with memory, with everything they had become together. Lena arrived moments later, stopped short when she saw. No words, just understanding. She knelt beside them and laid one hand on Valor's back, the other on Evelyn's shoulder. The center didn't open that day, or the next. Flowers started arriving from towns they'd never visited. Cards with children's drawings, letters from veterans, teachers, grandparents. Donations poured in, each with a simple note. In honor of the Bobcat who hugged. They held a small memorial in the barn. No speeches, just stories. People stood beneath the loft where owls once nested and shared how Valor had changed them. One woman said her daughter became a biologist because of that hug. A man in a wheelchair said watching Valor greet Evelyn helped him believe in trust again. When the night grew quiet, Evelyn returned to the enclosure. She placed his favorite fleece, worn, faded, still scented with cedar, beneath the tree stump where he used to nap. Then she hung a wooden sign beside the fence. Burned into the grain were 5 simple words. The wild chose to trust. A month later, the center resumed school visits. On the first day, a boy asked where the hugging Bobcat had gone. Evelyn smiled through the tightness in her chest and pointed to the mountains. He's out there now, she said. Not in body, but in every tree, every track in the snow, every wild heart we choose to protect. Then she paused. I was supposed to teach him about the world, she added. But he taught me something better. That love is wild, too. And once it finds you, it never really leaves. The children were silent. Then one girl stepped forward, placed a tiny pine cone beside the sign, and whispered, Goodbye, Valor. And somehow, that was enough. That was everything.